Until Then is an emotional masterpiece that I would recommend to anyone watching. It is genuinely one of the best games I've ever played, and that is, big words coming from me because I've played many different games. I've played hundreds of thousands of games before, and this is one of the best narrative experiences I've ever played through. Even better than any Telltale game, better than The Last of Us, better than Detroit Become Human. I'm being completely serious when I say this. The story in this game is beautiful. The characters are amazing. The story writing, great. The world building, absolutely beautiful. There's a lot of side activities like mini games. It really makes you feel like you're in the Philippines. It explores many different topics. And there's just so much to get into, and I'm so happy to be reviewing this game because it means a lot to me. So I hope you enjoy, and let's get into it, starting with the story. As I said at the start of the video, Until Then is an emotional masterpiece. The story is absolutely beautiful, and it conveyed a very realistic message, and a very good message in my opinion, about moving on, deja vu, and all of these other things that come together perfectly hand in hand, and they link other things together in the story. There are so many good aspects of the story that I really want to talk about without giving away too much. There are multiple endings in this game. You do have to play the game through 3 times, but things are different on each playthrough. So getting into it, we're going to start off with the main cast. The main cast, you're playing as Mark. Mark is a 15-year-old student, and he's having all of these different struggles. He doesn't really have anything to drive him in life. The only thing he does have is the piano. The reason he plays the piano and he's trying to learn the piano is because he wants to feel closer to his mom. This whole thing is about moving on from the past, and it's great that they're showing these realistic characters in a game like this, because I've noticed many games they will have an emotional setting. Every single character has their struggles, which is just unrealistic. This isn't the case in this game. There's some characters that have struggles, there's some characters that have worse struggles, and there's some characters that have 0 struggles. And that's realistic because not everyone struggles the same way as each other, and this also doesn't compare situations in real life to others. So it doesn't make you feel, like you're not worth it. Which many games do this, where they make it seem like these characters are suffering more than real people, which I don't really enjoy this type of setting, because not everyone suffers and not everyone doesn't suffer. Everyone has different experiences, and that's pretty much what this game is about. It's about moving on, it's about living your life and finding something to do. It's about finding a spark. That is literally a quote in the game, finding that spark. You play as Mark. He is going through his school life. He's a bit lazy. He doesn't have anything to strive for, as I said, until he starts to play the piano, because his mother used to play the piano for him when he was younger. And you go through all these different things, you meet certain characters, and you have this feeling of deja vu constantly, the main character, not you, where you feel like these things have happened before, or you've met these people before. And it's a really, really good way of doing this, where you're not sure if this deja vu is just a coincidence or if something bigger is happening here, because there are multiple characters that also feel deja vu throughout the game and throughout the playthroughs. You have so many interactions with side characters, and honestly I enjoyed having these little interactions, because there is this phone mechanic where you can go on social media and interact with side characters on their social media posts. Then say if you walk up to them in public or at school, you'll speak to them, they'll say something about what you commented on their post, or if you shared their post, they'll either thank you or they won't, I guess. One character in particular that does not thank you, she's a bit weird, but she's one of my favourite side characters. And that's something I want to be explored in maybe a future title, a spin-off, or a DLC. I want to hear what happens to some of the side characters after you finish the game, or certain things that happen throughout the game where you don't really ever learn more about. I would love for them to explore that in the future. Anyway, getting into the main story, of course you feel deja vu, certain weird things happen, there's many little hints they give you throughout the game, and they come together perfectly at the end, because you have to play the game through 3 times to fully understand the story and get the true ending. You know, I really enjoy the dynamic between Kathy, the main character's best friend, and Mark, obviously the main character. Usually when there's a best friend trope in a game or a show, they'll have one best friend have feelings for you, or you'll have feelings for your best friend, but that is not the case here. It's a good, best friend relationship between a male and female, because not every best friend relationship has to turn into something more. In media, they do this a lot, where they'll have 2 best friends slowly fall in love with each other, and I just think that's a very toxic trait. I'm not too sure how to describe it. It's very unrealistic. It gives off this thing where I'm sure people who have like a male or female best friend in real life, they get this a lot, where people ask if they're dating or not. It's a very unrealistic thing in my opinion, and it should be stopped, because it's kind of forcing this thing that if you're having a good relationship with the opposite sex, you're obviously dating, or you need to date. That's kind of a silly thing in my opinion, and I think that's a very good way of showing that you don't have to have romantic feelings for each other if you're the opposite gender. I'm not going to go too far into that, but yeah, that was a great, relationship dynamic. I like the main love interest. I won't say who it is. It'll be pretty obvious when you get into the game. Actually, I'll just say who it is. It's Nicole. She's a victim of the ruling incidents, which are earthquakes that happen in the Philippines. Either earthquakes or typhoons, I can't remember. I think earthquakes. And, they're polar opposites. Nicole and Mark are polar opposites, but, they kind of attract. And it's a very realistic relationship, in my opinion. Uh, Things happen quite quickly in the game, and some people might be turned off by that at first, but once you play the game through fully, things make sense. Everything comes together perfectly. I really did. This game really did speak to me. I'm trying to, not spoil anything. That's why I'm stuttering quite a bit, because it's hard to convey how much I really appreciate this game and what it's trying to convey. It's a game about moving on, finding friendship, and, just getting your life together and living without staying in the past. It's a game about striving forward and, reaching your goals. It's beautiful as well, with everything going on. It's nice as well when you're on your phone in the game and you see like news reports of things happening in the world at the time. It's set in 2014 to 2015, and it is nice just seeing all these side interactions. You have constant red herrings in the game as well, which some people might find annoying, but sometimes it makes you think, are these really red herrings, or is something actually happening here? And that gives you a sense of intrigue, and it keeps you playing. It's brilliant, honestly, and I loved it. So we're going to move on from the story. I can't really convey too much about it without spoiling anything, but it is an emotional roller coaster, and you will absolutely enjoy it. I recommend this game to anyone, even if you don't play games, even if you don't like these type of games. It is an amazing game, and you guys would love to experience this, trust me. Anyone would. Even I didn't think I would love this game as much as I did. It was on my radar for a very long time. It came out 4 months ago, I believe, and I've been wanting to play it ever since, but I did not expect to get that invested into the story, the characters, and the world building. It's an absolutely beautiful story, and everyone should experience it at least once in their life, whether you watch a playthrough or play it yourself. But the story isn't the only pretty part about this game, because we got to consider the art style. The art style is honestly brilliant in this game. It's one of the most beautiful looking games I've ever played. It's a pixelated style, very beautifully pixelated, I might add. And everything just feels so detailed. The environments, the characters in the background, like the NPCs interacting, everything feels so colourful in some scenes. For like the colourful places that are meant to be very densely populated, a lot going on the screen, but they're not too flashy. Even the hallucinogenic scenes where there's flashing lights and bright colours, and there's a lot going on the screen. I didn't get a headache whilst playing, and it didn't annoy me, and it wasn't too much. It was perfect. Again, when I was walking through different environments like the school, and I could hear people speaking in their native language, obviously the Filipino, it was very nice to just look at it. Of course, the art style has nothing to do with what's going on in the background in terms of noises and sound effects, but I would say they kind of come hand in hand in this game. The art style very much does blend in with the story and everything else. Even with the mini games and the activities, the art style is a prevalent part in that. I do really enjoy the fact that you can interpret the art in whatever way you feel, because there's a lot going on in the game that directly the story ties in with the art style, if you ask me. I don't know how to explain it, but they perfectly complement each other. There's things that happen in the story that you wouldn't fully understand if it wasn't for the way they express it using the art style, the pixelated graphics. It's so emotive and expressive. Most 3D games where they have facial animations, you can't really fully tell what emotions characters are feeling, which is why I like games that are anime style, because they can be much more emotive with everything, or pixelated games where you can really change the facial expressions. And that's what I mean by the art style directly, complements the story, because you wouldn't really be able to grasp everything that was going on without the art style, and you can kind of interpret certain characters' emotions as confirmation for theories you might have. And there's just a lot with the art style that complements every other aspect of the game perfectly. Like I said, there's mini games that, are based off of real life mini games, like games that you would play at street vendors in the Philippines, at carnivals, and all these different things that I would say perfectly, complement the art style itself. Because, of course, if you're going to have an art style that's based in a certain country, you want it to be realistic. And for it to be realistic, you need to express it in a way that it makes the player feel like they're actually in the Philippines. Even if it's not a game that's set in the Philippines, again, it works for any game that's set in a real life location. Fallout, America, you feel like you're in the streets of, any Fallout game, you feel like you're actually there in that location, because the art style was very much American, and the locations are pretty much direct copies of real life locations, even if some of the names, aren't actually real life places, but are based off of real life places. You've got Appalachia, which is in West Virginia, and it does look very much like West Virginia in the Fallout games. You've got New Vegas, obviously Las Vegas. Everything feels perfect in those games, and obviously I'm not going to be speaking about them, but yeah, my point is art styles can directly complement everything else, whether it's the gameplay, the story is perfect in this game. Alright, moving on to the music. I was really impressed with the soundtrack. The original tracks for this game were absolutely beautiful. They fit every scene perfectly. I was crying in some of the scenes because the music was so good, whilst you were going through these emotional, action-packed, trauma-packed scenes with some sad things happening and some realistic emotions. I do believe good music can express emotions in a story more than anything else. Voice acting's great, but I feel like music is even better for emotion, especially for a game like this that has zero voice acting. If you were to take away the music, you wouldn't be feeling as many emotions. There's also a really cool part about this game where they have some of my favorite classical pieces, like you've got For Elise, you've got Wedding Bells, you've got Love Sorrow, which is a absolutely brilliant composition. All of these classical pieces, even romantic pieces, I don't know if you know what that is, it's a certain era of music. But yeah, I think it's very fun that they put these into the game, because you've got this rhythm game mode, which was very hard at first. I had to adjust it in the settings, that's one complaint. is I had no idea what I was doing in the settings and how to adjust them for the rhythm game, but that's a topic for after, even though it does directly, relate to the music in the game. But yeah, everything felt perfect in this game. The music perfectly complemented the art style and the story, and the art style perfectly complemented the activities you could do, and the location and the storyline. Everything in this game just fits perfectly, and we're going to move on to the final topic. Finally, moving on to the final topic, the gameplay and features. As I said, Until Then is a narrative, interactive story experience, meaning there's lots of mini games to find and play, there's lots to interact with in terms of many little hidden things you can do, and little events you can trigger depending on what you interact with, and there's also many other things I would like to speak about. The first things is the little interactions you have with characters. As I said in the story, you can trigger other interactions, say if you like a certain person's post or comment under their post. Of course, it's not an actual person's post, but you're interacting with these NPCs in-game on their social medias, and they may have reactions to your comments in real life if you walk up to them or find them in public. There's also a crap ton of mini games you can play. You've got darts, you've got 2 rhythm games. One's heavily dependent on the story, where you can only do it once. Well, you can do it twice, where you practice the piano, and then one more time whilst you play your final piano piece. I'm not going to spoil what that's about, but that's also a rhythm game. You've also got, I think it's Panko Panko, I can't remember the full name, or what it actually is. It's like a rhythm game arcade machine, almost like Dance Dance Revolution, with like just arrow keys as your rhythm dots. I still can't beat it. You can get 3 trophies from beating all of the different levels, I think. Still haven't done it. But yeah, you've got darts, you've got that, you've got a horror house, you've got food mini games, you've got so many different mini games that really just, express Filipino culture in the perfect way. You've got so many things you can interact with. You've got funny little references here and there to other games like Doki Doki Literature Club. You've got Dark Souls references. You've got Mega Mind references. You've got so many different references in this game. It's kind of like crazy how much they fit in. Even subtle ones that you might not get unless you've played a certain game or heard of it before or watched a movie. You really can find many like funny little hidden jokes about other games, either taking the piss of them or paying homage to them, which is great. I like to see that because it kind of merges aspects of the game with real life. It kind of shows the tastes of the creator as well. It shows what they enjoy themselves, what games they play, and what they know of their pop culture references. That is super fun in my opinion. Again, like I did say earlier, the gameplay aspects in terms of the mini games also feed into the story a little bit, with your hallucinations also taking over your mind whilst you're playing certain games throughout the story, and making it harder to win these mini games or score higher, which is very interesting because I was so annoyed. I kept on trying to get this darts trophy. I could probably get it now, but at first I was struggling because you're having these hallucinations and it was making everything hard to control. I think you have to get a bullseye on your first shot. I think that was the trophy, but didn't do it the first playthrough. Probably will go back and play it again just to get all the trophies, because there's so many mini games that I've missed or haven't fully completed. There's a horror house as well where you have to scare people, which is almost like a reverse Pac-Man thing, where you have to scare people away. Whoever scares the most people wins. It's very fun and interactive. As I said, with the music, that's also a side of it where it blends into the story. Basically, every single feature in this game has some sort of, relation to the story, the plot overall, or something else, which is a very good way of doing it. It blends things in perfectly and just makes it seem like there's no empty spaces in the game where you'll be like, oh, this is great, but I feel like they could have done more with that. That's not the case here, which is brilliant, and I've really enjoyed it. One thing I do want to complain about though is a performance issue. It only happened about 6 times. It was still quite annoying, but basically, whenever you change over to the next chapter or another scene, sometimes my controller would stop working. Tried powering off my controller, nothing would work, had to close down the game and start that part from the latest checkpoint. But luckily, when this happened, it happened at a checkpoint each time, because it only happens during a scene transition. So yeah, that's great. Honestly, brilliant game, brilliant gameplay mechanics. I love how they blend certain things in with, you know, the story, and how all of these mini games are very much representations of Filipino culture. So let's move on to the final verdict. So for our final verdict, what are my final thoughts on the game? Well, overall, I really enjoyed my experience with Until Then. I don't think I'm ever going to forget playing the game. I'm going to miss seeing all these characters. Maybe they'll revisit the games in the future, maybe they'll make a sequel, maybe they'll make it to a series. I'm hoping maybe we'll get a DLC to see where some side characters are after the story takes place. And, you know, there's many things that are still unexplained and some mysteries, but, you know, I kind of like an open-ended, well, ending where you can kind of make your own things up in your head and just theorize on what's happening afterward. There's many things with the ending I really enjoyed, how it was kind of up to your interpretation. It was a very beautiful game with a beautiful message, and I really enjoyed everything. The mechanics, I enjoyed interacting with NPCs, all of these different things. I love the references to Megamind and many other movies, games. It was a very enjoyable experience overall, and I don't think I'll ever forget it. So I'm going to be giving this game a 10 out of 10, because it is a very memorable experience that I will never forget. Overall, yes, it is a great game, and there were some issues, mainly with the performance issues, but, you know, those didn't really affect the game too much. I'm still going to be giving the game a 10 out of 10. I would like to apologise for the pacing for this video. There was a lot to talk about. I know it's a long video, one of my longest reviews yet. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.